Good Monday morning, everybody. I am Angie Callen, your host of No More Mondays podcast, the show where we believe you can have a thriving career or business and an amazing life on your terms. And what I do is bring you guests who not only prove that fact, but are here with resources and actionable advice to help you live and work more brilliantly. And I'm wondering if there's any creatives out there listening. If so, thank you, because I tend to lean into the technical world and, don't hang out with as many artists as I probably should, because I am not exactly the most artistic girl out there. Understatement of the century. But what if you and I could uncover and tap into a creative essence that we all have inside? That's exactly what Mike Brennan is here to talk about today. In a world where everything is way too serious, Mike encourages people to have fun, and he even wrote a book on it. Make Fun a Habit, the creative playbook for making life and work fun again. He's passionate about reigniting the lost art of fun so that we can unlock the potential and live a more balanced life. He's a creative consultant, communicator, professional artist, and most importantly, a trusted friend in my circle, in my community. So I'm excited to get him on here to play. Mike Brennan, welcome to No More Mondays.
Thank you so very much. This is exciting. I'm ready to have some fun. You?
Me too. And we were talking before we started recording that when I met Mike and I knew he had this perspective, I really appreciated it because I take my work very seriously, but I don't take myself that seriously. And, for any of you who are out there watching on LinkedIn, you probably follow my content and I'm usually up to some kind of antics. And we were even laughing over the fact that I have a dog named Steve. So I think that we live in a world that is a little too serious. And I think if we back that off, the daily grind becomes a little bit less grindy. And so, Mike, I want you to talk to me a little bit more about how have we lost the sense of fun and play in our lives? Like, what have you seen out there that is starting to that took the kid out of us?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I recognize this in myself, right? It was one of those things where, even being a creative person, people think like, oh, well, you're just kind of doing fun things all day long. I mean, it's creativity. What's not fun about that? But of course, anything that's tied to a business, there are parts of it that are not fun. And so that coupled with, coming out of the pandemic, coupled with just the world we live in where headlines and everything's a lot upside down. And I think very quickly you can get to the point where you just stop looking for fun and start expecting things to be heavy and if not that, then practical and responsible and all these adult words that sometimes strip the fun out of life. And so very quickly we can find ourselves in a place where we're just driven by things that matter but don't really make life enjoyable. And so while we still got to get things done and we still want to do a great job and do what we do with excellence, we also need to recognize that we're a whole person and we need to experience enjoyment of what we're doing, because otherwise we're going to either burn out or we're going to just end up having a miserable existence on this planet, and no one's going to want to be around us after a little while because we're going to be, like Oscar the Grouch.
And I feel like we've almost started wearing it as a badge of honor. It's almost like the I'm so busy badge of honor, or the oh, I have so many responsibilities, or oh, I'm so stressed out, or oh my gosh, I have to take the kids 97 places. And it's almost become this thing that is in a way prideful to have this like heaviness, when like that statement lighten up has a lot of power behind it. Would you agree?
Oh, it's definitely. And I think the problem is that we have been trained to value things that it's always more, it's always bigger, it's always faster, it's always just, push things to the limit as much as we can. And we tend to lose sight of the fact that we should have places where we're resting. We should have places where we are experiencing enjoyment and fun and levity. And we end up deferring that for another day. Like when I'm done with all the things I got to do, when someday when I can retire, then I'll take that trip, then I'll do that thing. And so everything is always deferment. And in the way that we look at fun is always like this. It's a reward for a process rather than part of a process. And that's why I love to get into this conversation and say, let's make this fun thing part of the process so that we're experiencing it more often, so that we're not deferring for it for another day that quite honestly might not come, right?
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth, and we were totally on the same page there. That it was, we have made fun or even relaxation a then activity. I can, if I do this, then I can do that, instead of something that is integrated and habitual, which is why I love the title of the book. And your perspective on this is, it's both refreshing to me, but also takes me back to a moment where something about the creativity in everyone sparked for me. Because I appreciate that that's something that you're out to help people realize, is that everyone has some sort of creativity in them, whether you're literally an artist or you like to bake. And years ago, I was at a conference when a speaker said something that really stuck with me. And he said, you have to be creative to be an artist, but you don't have to be an artist to be creative. And I want you to talk to me about that in the context of this idea that we all have some sort of creative thread in us.
Yes. And you're spot on there, because most of the time people confuse creativity with being artistic. Now, being artistic is a part of being creative, but it's not the whole of it. And so people say things like, well, I can't draw a stick figure, or I can't sing, I can't dance, I can't do any of the performing arts, or visual arts. That's what they're really talking about. And I say, okay, that's fine. But what can you do? Because creativity shows up in ways that we don't often acknowledge it. And so for someone who is an entrepreneur, they're building things, they're creating a business that wasn't there previously. And so along with that comes a whole host of systems and structures and processes and all these things that are tapping into creativity. But most of the time people don't think about it in those terms. And it could be on the personal side, how you dress, how you decorate your home. Maybe it's how you organize. I've seen people do amazing things with an organizational skill, and I'm like, that's not me. I totally see creativity at work there, because I wish I had that, but I don't, and I need people like that. And so I think the first part of the process is saying, yes, we are all creative, and then identifying, what does that look like for you? Because asking that question is important, because then we're setting intention. Then we're saying, okay, I'm recognizing I am creative, even though it doesn't look like the people around me, which is fine. It doesn't need to. And how does it show up for me? And then once we know how it shows up for me, then we can do this with intention and purpose. And that's when things really start getting traction, because as we recognize these things as abilities and gifts and a creative tool, then we can start to apply it on purpose and say, oh, well, yes, I really love to do, whatever, build systems or organize or make cakes and decorate and entertain, whatever that looks like for you. Then you can start to do that with more intention and purpose, and making sure that you're leaning into it. And then you have power behind it. Then you get confidence in it. And then you can start to see how, when you are creative, it helps other people, not just yourself.
And we'll connect the dots at this idea of, if you can figure out your type of creativity, your creative essence is what Mike calls it, you can actually then connect that to the intentional fun that we're talking about weaving into life's process and habits. And I'll even give you just a personal example of one of the reasons that statement that speaker made, which, by the way, I can tie back to our mutual friend, Terry Weaver. He was not the person that said it, but it was an event connected to him. And when he said that phrase, that you have to be creative to be an artist, but you don't have to be an artist to be creative, it almost was like somebody gave me permission to realize my own creative essence that I had thought I almost wasn't allowed to have. Depending on what generation you grew up in, we're also kind of, taught that whole starving artist thing. So being a creative means you can't have a successful career in it or can't have a vocation. And I went the total opposite, because I am not an artist that has any sort of thing I can turn into a vocation there. But, I went to engineering school, and that moment and hearing that helped me understand why engineering was not something I could do in the long term and sustainable. And it's because the creative aspects of my personality were dying on the vine, because they weren't being activated. And as an entrepreneur and a business owner, I get to be strategic. I get to ideate. I get to create programs. I get to figure out how to take knowledge I have and teach it to others. And those are the kinds of things we're talking about that are creative, but not artistic.
Correct. Yes. And the thing is, when that's tied to fun, people think like fun is frivolous. Fun is a luxury, not a necessity. And I'm like, no, actually, it's the other way around. It really is a necessity because it's when we have fun that we're actually enjoying things. We're enjoying what we're doing. We're enjoying our lives. And so I'm not talking about fun. And I get pushback, especially sometimes when it's more of a corporate environment or in the business world. And people say, well, what place does fun have here? Does it have a place? Should it have a place? And I say, well, don't you want your employees to enjoy what they're doing? Don't you want them to come in and give like the best parts of themselves because they can't wait to contribute to something bigger than themselves? Don't you want them having ideas and like they can't wait to execute those things and have the team come around those? Like that is all having fun with something because you're enjoying it, because you're activating this curiosity, you're activating possibilities. And that, I don't know anybody who would be like, yeah, I don't want anybody around me like that. I don't want that in my company. I don't want to live like that. Like, we're not talking about fun in terms of like clown noses and throwing confetti and having pizza parties. I mean, sure, if that's your brand of fun, have at it. But that's the
Time
other
and
thing about
place.
fun. Yeah, right. And but that's the other thing too, is when I have these conversations about fun, I say, your idea of fun might look completely different than somebody next to you. And that's okay. Just like creativity we talked about. It's asking the question, what does fun look like for me? What do I enjoy? How do I go about things when I enjoy them? How can I start to be more intentional about bringing those things into what I'm doing, even the areas where it doesn't really seem like there's any fun to be had, you know?
I, it's so there's such a visual there for a second about this, team sitting around a boardroom, trying to figure out like the next marketing campaign, and they have all got frowns on their faces because they're miserable. And head honcho standing there going, "Nope, I don't want any of you to have any type of fun because I don't want anyone in this office to be innovative." Right?
Right.
It's almost like you're curtailing uh the success or the potential of both the humans and the bigger picture they're part of by not allowing this kind of dynamic to take place, especially in a corporate setting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And there's something about the nature of us trying to solve problems that we've been taught. The way you solve a problem is you keep pushing at it until you've solved it. And some problems aren't solved that way. They need room. They need to breathe. You need to take a break. And so if you just have the only method is keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing, you will burn out or you will arrive at solutions that are not the best solutions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you learn to go, okay, you know what, we're going to take a little break. We're going to give our brain the space it needs. I mean, this is why we have ideas when we take the dog for a walk or when we're in the shower. It's because our brain is like resting. It's not like
Uh-huh.
trying to push at the problem. We're not sitting in our desk hunched over and going like, okay, I have to do this for the next 7 hours, and all of a sudden things come. Well, why? Because we're in a different place in our brains and we're open and we're allowing different thoughts to happen. And so if we want to harness that, again, with intention and purpose, then we need to create room and space for that. And so those things can go across lines. You can have an idea when you're out walking the dog and you're not, quote, on the clock, that could affect a project that you have at work. And you could be at work doing something and having a little break or whatever, and it could solve a problem or inspire you to do something when you get home from work. It's like we're not these
Yeah.
segmented beings that we like to think about so often where we're, okay, this hour, these hours go to that person, these hours go to that. We're one person, and how we show up is how we show up. So why not show up the best way that we can?
Well, and nothing. I find that a funny statement considering the second season of Severance is about to hit Apple TV.
Yes.
But also, nothing and no. First of all, we're not robots because without this, what makes us any different than the AI that is creeping up into our lives? And nothing. Even machines aren't meant to operate at 100% capacity at 100% of the time. And if you don't take these breaks, creative, turn off. I'm a big fan of the outdoor kind of aspect, and give yourself that space. You're eventually what bends breaks. And so I
Mhm.
love that we talked a little bit about this, about how it looks in like a corporate environment, but I would be curious to know from an individual perspective, what kind of changes you've seen, this idea of like tapping into creativity, letting that segue into more habitual fun. Like what changes have you seen that make in people's lives or even in your life?
Yes. I think the biggest thing that has happened is an openness to curiosity, which leads to possibilities. So for me, when I was in a place where my surroundings maybe were less than ideal, it's easy to let those things dictate your mood and your outlook. And after a while, you can start to just be negative. You can start to complain. You could start to think there are no opportunities, or the possibilities are
Mhm.
behind me, not in front of me. And so when you start to embrace this idea of curiosity and play and fun, it starts to do something to your outlook and your mindset where it introduces this like what if, like what what would be possible? What if I took one thing and another thing and put them together in a way that hasn't been done before, or the way I haven't done it before? Would that lead to a new result? Or what if, in the book I talk about one of the things of going down a road that you would not normally go down, like a path. I was going someplace on my way home, and I realized one day I was like, I always take the same path home. Part of it is just like I'm not thinking and I'm just kind of in my zone, and it's the fastest way, I guess, because that's the way that I've always done it. And I started thinking to myself, there's a couple of other roads that I'm not even really sure what's over there. I haven't had a reason to go over there. So what if on the way home this time I kind of meandered and I let myself on purpose just kind of explore what's down that road? What's the worst thing that happens? It's a dead end. I have to turn around and I've wasted a couple of minutes. Okay. So I did this, and the amazing thing was I found this park that was right there in my neighborhood that I had no idea was there, because again, I didn't have a reason to go down there. Nobody actually ever told me it was down there, and I had lived in this neighborhood for quite a long time, and I was like astonished that I stumbled over this park just because I was willing to go a different way home. And I thought to myself, man, how often do we miss things that are right around us because we're so fixated on getting from point A to point B, or being the most efficient that we can? And I'm not, saying don't be efficient, but what I am saying is be open. Like
Mm.
explore, play, ask what's possible, because the more curious we get about things, the more we get invested in something. And then the more ideas come and the more excited we get, because all of a sudden there's possibilities where there weren't, new possibilities, things we hadn't thought about before, discoveries that happen that would never happen otherwise. So that's why I love this idea. And that's what I've seen happen in me. I've seen it happen in some other people where they start to come around these ideas, even starting little places to introduce this idea of, well, if I have to sit down and I have to like work in a spreadsheet, and I hate spreadsheets, and I'm saying that I know I hate spreadsheets even before I sit down, I've already, like, I'm a self-fulfilling prophecy. I know that I'm going to be in a bad mood because I'm already in a bad mood and this is going to suck, and I'm doing it, and see, it sucks, and I can't believe this. And everybody around you is kind of like, okay, I'm going to go out for a little while because you're just not in a good place. And right. And I'm like, what if we knew we had to do the sucky thing? We acknowledged we had to do the sucky thing, but we asked the question of what would it look like for this to be fun? Well, there's only so many things that maybe I can introduce as other change agents, but maybe one of the things is some music that I really enjoy that puts me in a better mood. So I put on this
Mhm.
playlist, and I decide that even though I can't get up from my seat, I have to work on this laptop and do the spreadsheet, that I'm going to let my mind and my body move around. And I'm going to start doing some weird dances as I'm doing this thing, right? I mean, and that's okay for me. Somebody else might be like, I would never do that, whatever. Find your brand of fun. That's fine. But what I'm saying is that there are ways to introduce fun and find fun in places that look like it's the furthest thing from it.
And some of it's a choice. Some of
Oh, yeah.
it's just making the choice and changing the perspective to say, okay, I got sucky work to do. At least I'll add something, slightly enjoyable to it. Or maybe in that situation, that's where the reward piece comes in for the balance of like, don't do the sucky thing all the time. Go do something, fun in exchange. And I have to tell you all, Mike doesn't just talk this talk, he walks the walk. So, in case you haven't picked up on it, Mike is another of my friends from The Thing. And we've had a series of guests who you are all now part of my circle. And during this conference, Mike sat stage side and faithfully sketched every single one of us who was on stage. And I have to share it. So for any of you who are out there actually watching, I have to figure out how to do this. For any of you who are out there actually watching, I want you to see this because it is one of my most favorite things. I'm so excited I have it. But Mike drew this in real time while sitting next to his stage while I was speaking. And for each one of us, he grabbed a little kind of like soundbite or earworm to kind of reinforce, what we were talking about. And something just occurred to me as I was looking at this, Mike, was that, what I said, that fear kills more dreams than failure ever will, kind of ties into this conversation, is that I think we're afraid to play because it will keep us from progress or being responsible or kind of whatever it is. And I didn't even think of that until I looked at that sketch. So that's just a little piece of what Mike's creativity and actually articism did for me. And I wanted really to show that to everybody, to know that, like, literally you're not just talking to somebody who wrote a book about play, but who has weaved it in to part of your vocation. And I'm actually curious, just from a career perspective, how did you get into something so specific as an artist and as a creative?
Well, I mean, I was the typical artist kid, drawing and creating all sorts of art and just being in love with it because it was fun, right? That was the thing. You do as a kid, you don't really question it. You just find what's fun and you do more of that. And so because of that, I had this track laid where I was like, this is what I want to do. There were very vivid moments when I was a kid where I was drawing greeting cards, like cartoon characters of shows I was watching. It was part of my world, and I would make some art of that, and I would give it to a family member in a card form, and their faces would light up, and they'd be like, "You did this for me?" And I was like, "Yes." And they would hang it on the fridge, and I knew in that moment there was something that was happening. I was creating something, and there was an exchange, because then I could give it to somebody else, and their life, even if it's a smile, would be impacted. And later on, I thought to myself, I want to do this for the rest of my life, and got into some negotiations with my parents about, art school, because I said, I'm going to art school. I'm not going to school. Right. I'm like, I'll show you, I'll be a shipwreck of a life, right. It's a little spite them. And they're like, okay, you can go to art school. But the caveat was, you need to go for graphic design, because at least it's commercially viable. And I was like, okay, I can do that. I'm into music and movies and magazines and stuff. And so I went for graphic design and graduated with that degree, and then was in the marketplace for a while in corporate and in small mom and pop shops and all that stuff. And actually, I hit a wall. I ended up burning out, and I walked away from my creativity for about 10 years, and then did something completely different, and then realized I'm suffering from depression now because I'm not doing what's in me. I'm not doing kind of what my purpose is. And that took me on a road of really at this rock bottom moment in my life where I was like, you know what? Can I come back to my art? Can I come back to my creativity? I'm suffering from depression. There's a lot of life things happening, and I don't even know if that's possible. And so the more I asked those questions, the more I kind of left it open-ended to say, I don't know, but what else do we have to lose? Right. So I ended up diving more into that. And that's how I discovered my voice and my style, and had to expose a lot of lies to myself that said I couldn't be a real artist because I couldn't do photorealistic style, or some of the other people that I was comparing myself to. Unpack those lies, and then just kind of kept going. I did a daily creative habit, which is what I call it now, which is basically a drawing or painting every single day. Matter of fact, I'm still going, and I'll be completing my 13th year this April. And that journey teaches you something. It teaches you to do the work, to do the bad work, because you have to get to the good work. It teaches you consistency. It teaches you to mine things, because you can get bored easily, and then you have to go deeper. And then you go, Why am I doing this? What do I want to do? What do I really want this to look like? And what opportunities are here? And so that transformed also into why I talk about creativity so much and why I help people, because I know the transforming power of creativity had on my life, not only doing it from a child, but then walking away, burning out, suffering depression, coming back to it and seeing, oh, this actually got me back in touch with a lot of the things that when I was a kid, that joy, that rediscovery, that passion and purpose. So, yeah.
One of the things that I love about podcasting is one, the people I get to keep in my community like Mike, but also when you ask a question thinking you know the answer, what the answer is going to be, and then you get something infinitely more powerful out of it. And what I love, and I'm going to tie back, is the fact that your journey, Mike, is exactly what you were talking about insofar as why we need to lean in to the creativity, why you should be leaning into the inner voice that's telling you something's missing, whether it's I'm not coloring enough or I'm in the wrong job, right? There's a bigger kind of picture here. And it was you kind of leaning into that intuition and being curious that led you to exactly where you needed to be. But the 10 years of crap in between informed it. And I think that that is so just absolutely incredible about how the mess does actually become the message. And that perspective is what allowed you to see what is missing and maybe now proactively help somebody who feels that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the type of thing where I realized I had to experience this to be able to talk about it from a place of authenticity. Because I'm not somebody who's just picking this as like, this is the flavor of the day, right? This is the hot topic that everybody's talking about. No, this is actually stuff I've lived and continue to live and continue to wrestle with and evolve through. And I want to see the transforming power of creativity and fun at work in everybody's life, because I know what can happen as a result.
Well, and my favorite word on the planet is authenticity, because the hardest thing to be is anyone other than who you naturally are. And so I think this is and leaning into the fun and creativity and transforming power of it, I think is the perfect time to start giving people a few little pieces of advice on how they might be able to start doing that. So obviously the first piece of advice is go buy Mike's book, because it's going to give you all the tips. But for those of you who are going to buy the paper version and don't want to wait, let's give them some highlights. What are your 3 favorite ways to start tapping into creativity and bringing a little fun back in life?
Yes. So I think the first thing is to recognize that small is valuable. And we have a big bias. We want big budgets. We want big blocks of time. We want everything big, 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 big. And we overlook what 10 or 15 minutes can do in a day. Because if we strung together those 10 or 15 minutes for an entire week, we would have more time that we're focused in practicing the intention and action of what we want than if we waited for those large blocks of times. So I would say get comfortable with the small, see the value in it when you can have a cumulative effect. That's one thing for sure. The other thing I would say is practice curiosity. Like, ask yourself, what do you notice? What do you find interesting? And pull on the threads, because the more that we can do that, the more that we can practice that, the more we'll realize that there are things all around us and even within us that perhaps we have questions about, that we have this curiosity. And if we start to go down that road, we will open up more solutions, more opportunities, more discoveries and self-discoveries. Even if you feel like you're in a place where there's no opportunity. I'm in a land of darkness, and my life has been the same for 12 years, and, fill in all the blanks of whatever you're telling yourself. This is the moment where you start to introduce a new thought, which can lead to new actions, which can lead to new mindsets. And so, don't underestimate that either.
I'm typing because I want that line. New thoughts lead to new actions, lead to new mindsets. You can't do anything about anything that occurred before this exact moment in time, except for learn from it and form new thoughts, take new actions, and establish a new mindset from this moment forward. And that goes back to this idea that you have a choice and you have agency. I have a little new tagline that I kind of came up with, and I feel like it's very representative of what we're talking about. And that is that ambition is not at the expense of joy. And you said the joy word earlier, and I think it is so important because I think we say creativity, we say fun, we say act like a kid, and all of that to me stacks up to bring more true joy and happiness in our life, because I think most people are not at that state. And these are the types of really small things that an hour and a half of creative expression or something fun a week experienced in 20-minute increments can actually stack up. I love the idea of get comfortable with the cumulative effect and recognize what it can do and lean into that curiosity. Ooh, those are 3 fun tips.
Yes. Yeah.
I kind of want
It's amazing.
I kind of want to keep going.
Well, I mean, that's the thing about creativity and fun. It opens up possibilities and options. And I don't think you can ever use up creativity. I think you can get burned out because you're not using it correctly or there's other agents involved. But I think we're always maybe just one step away from a new idea or a new execution of something or a new way of looking at something. And so stay active, stay engaged. Like you said, agency is huge. No one's coming to bring this to you. This is your responsibility to live your life and make these choices for yourself and to give yourself permission. You used that word earlier too. Give yourself permission, because don't wait for that from someone where it's not going to come, because then you'll waste a lot of time and effort and energy and you'll be no further along.
And if you need, I'm going to cue you up for a shameless plug. If you like these little tidbits, there's a way that you can get one for every single day of the week. Mike, tell us how.
Yeah. So I have a email newsletter called Daily Creative Habit. And it simply goes out every Monday, which we have the Monday connection. We'll talk about that in a second, right? But every Monday it goes out, and it's really me sharing some kind of insight or story or experience to give some inspiration and some action points. And then I'm also giving some daily prompts. So I'm like, look, if you're interested in doing something, but you don't know what, you need someone to tell you what to do, right? Or you want ideas to exercise, to say, well, maybe I like writing, but I want to try something in the visual arts. I give you some ideas on some things you can try, and just give you really resources to help you win when it comes to creativity and having some fun. So, yeah.
And we're going to drop the link to access those here in comments, and we'll put it in the show notes on the podcast. And I'll be a living example of something like that is very powerful for me, because I am an idea generator when given a prompt. I am not a great talk about something person, but you give me one word and I'll tell you 97 ways to make money from it, or I will get up on stage and talk about it for 36 minutes, like no problem. But with blank page syndrome, I don't do well journaling, talking, anything. And so some of these prompts are a great way to just start like working through that and do those while having a nice structured process to do that kind of daily add up cumulative effect thing, and being curious, because you're going to be pushed to try different things. So I'm a huge fan of this. In fact, I will probably be the first one adding my name to the list when we are completed here, but definitely going to encourage you to do that, because I know a lot of you out there do not identify as artists and creative, because I know who my audience is. And this is the kind of stuff that makes you have no more Mondays, because you're adding fun into every single day of your week. And that's why when Mike told me he sends this out on Monday, I was like, oh yeah, meant to be. Oh, I love it.
So good. Yeah.
So in addition to Daily Creative Habit, and we'll throw the link here, this has actually been fun. Aren't we on brand?
Yes.
Where do people tap into you and your creative inspiration and all of this great wisdom on how to have a little bit more fun and creativity in life? Where do we find you?
So the easiest way is if you just go to my main website, which is mikebrennan.me. And from there, you can find the links out to the artwork that I do, the live sketching. I have a podcast called Creative Chats. So I do that every week. That drops on Wednesdays, and have conversations around creativity and talk to people who aren't just artists, but who are or creative people, entrepreneurs and writers, and all sorts of people who are showing up, doing something, and me examining their story and pulling on threads. So I invite you on the journey. Come hang out with me and let's create more stuff together.
I love it. Yours truly may be showing up on that podcast. So that gives you just another reason to tune in. And I love that idea of like, pull the thread, right? Don't just ignore the thread. Pay attention to common themes is something I have learned, because if you don't, you're going to get smacked in the face with it eventually. And if you've got an inner voice telling you something, or if you've got a curiosity that just keeps, you need to scratch the itch, people. And I'm hoping that Mike inspired you to think about that idea in a totally different way and lean into it from the lens of curiosity and creativity. So check him out. Check out his podcast, MikeBrennan.com. We've got all the links for him, the book, and Daily Creative Habit, right? That comes out on Mondays. Woohoo! No more Mondays. Coming at you in comments and the show notes. Mike Brennan, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me and for reminding us all that we are still allowed to have a little kid in us. Don't forget to play today and every day this week, everybody. I'll see you next week for another episode of No More Mondays.